Dr. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped out of the transport vehicle onto the dusty surface of Kepler 442b. The twin suns cast long shadows across the barren landscape, and the air tasted metallic through his breathing mask. He had been on this mining colony for 3 months now, studying the strange life forms that somehow managed to survive in this harsh environment. Today would be different, though. Today they were exploring something that should not exist. The alien structure stood before them like a dark monument against the orange sky. It was made of some black material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The building was massive, easily the size of 10 city blocks back on Earth, and covered in symbols that no human had ever seen before. Mining crews had discovered it 2 weeks ago while digging for rare minerals. They had immediately stopped all work and called in the science teams. Jake adjusted his equipment pack and looked at his 2 companions. Dr. Lisa Carter was the team's archaeologist, a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent her career studying dead civilizations. Next to her stood Alex Rodriguez, their security officer and tech specialist. All 3 wore the standard environmental suits required for extended surface operations on this world. The entrance to the structure had been sealed with some kind of energy barrier, but the mining crews had managed to create a small opening using plasma cutters. Jake squeezed through the gap first, his helmet lights cutting through the darkness inside. The air was thick and still, untouched by wind for who knows how many years. The interior was even more impressive than the outside. Massive corridors stretched in every direction, their walls covered in the same strange symbols they had seen outside. But what caught Jake's attention were the smaller rooms that lined these corridors. Each one contained what looked like stasis pods, though they were designed very differently from anything humans had ever built. Lisa moved to examine the symbols while Alex set up portable lighting systems. Jake was drawn to the stasis pods. Most of them were empty, their transparent covers open and their contents long gone. But as he moved deeper into the facility, he found something that made him stop breathing for a moment. One pod was still active. Its cover was closed and glowing with a soft blue light. Inside, Jake could see something that looked impossible. It was a dog, or at least something very much like a dog. The creature was about the size of a German shepherd, with thick fur and what appeared to be cybernetic implants along its spine and skull. Jake called his teammates over immediately. Lisa arrived first, her eyes wide behind her helmet visor. Alex joined them moments later, his scanning equipment already humming as it analyzed the pod's energy signatures. The readings were incredible. The pod was maintaining perfect life support systems, keeping the creature in a state of suspended animation. The technology was far beyond anything humans had developed, yet the being inside looked unmistakably like an Earth animal. Alex ran his scanners over the pod's control systems. The interface was alien but seemed to respond to his touch. Symbols appeared on small screens around the pod, changing and shifting as Alex experimented with different commands. Jake studied the creature more closely through the transparent cover. The cybernetic implants were sophisticated, integrated seamlessly with the animal's nervous system. Thin cables ran from ports in the skull to connection points along the spine. The implants glowed with the same blue light as the pod itself. Lisa was recording everything, her camera capturing detailed images of the symbols and the creature. She had seen many strange things in her career, but nothing like this. The implications were staggering. If this was really an Earth animal, how had it gotten here? This system was hundreds of light years from Earth, and humans had only been traveling between stars for about 50 years. The pod's systems seemed stable, but Jake knew they needed to make a decision quickly. The facility's power source was unknown, and there was no telling how long it would continue to function. They could try to transport the entire pod back to their research station, but that would be extremely risky. The alternative was to attempt to revive the creature here and now. Alex had managed to access what appeared to be the pod's medical monitoring systems. The readings showed the creature was in perfect health, despite being in stasis for an unknown period of time. Its vital signs were strong and stable, and the life support systems were functioning perfectly. Jake made the decision that would change everything. They would attempt to revive the creature. Alex worked carefully with the pod's controls, following what seemed to be a logical sequence for ending the stasis process. The blue glow slowly began to fade as the pod's systems responded to his commands. The transparent cover started to open with a soft hissing sound, Warm air flowed out of the pod, carrying scents that reminded Jake of earth forests. The creature's breathing became more visible as the stasis field fully dissolved. Slowly, very slowly, the dog's eyes began to open. They were brown and intelligent, filled with an awareness that seemed almost human. The cybernetic implants along its spine pulsed with gentle light as its systems came back online. The dog raised its head carefully, looking around at the three humans who surrounded it. There was no fear in its eyes, only curiosity and something that looked like recognition. It sat up in the pod, moving with careful precision as if testing its body after a long sleep. Then something extraordinary happened. A voice spoke in Jake's mind, clear as if someone was standing next to him. The words came through his communication system's translation matrix, but he somehow knew they originated from the dog itself. The voice was warm and slightly confused, with an accent that sounded distinctly American. It said simply, "Where is Commander Ryan Parker? I was told to wait for him here." Lisa gasped audibly over the communication channel. Alex's equipment registered massive neural activity from the creature's implants. Jake stared at the dog, trying to process what had just happened. The dog looked directly at Jake, tilting its head in a gesture that was purely canine despite the advanced technology embedded in its body. When it spoke again, the voice carried a note of concern and growing confusion. "My name is Ranger. I am waiting for my handler, Commander Ryan Parker. He told me to sleep here until he returned. How long have I been waiting? Where is the commander?" Jake found his voice finally, speaking slowly and gently to the enhanced animal before him. "Ranger, my name is Dr. Jake Morrison. We found you here in this facility. Can you tell us what year it is supposed to be?" Ranger's ears drooped slightly as he processed this question. The implants along his spine flickered as he accessed internal memory systems. When he answered, his mental voice carried a note of uncertainty that made Jake's heart ache. The year should be 2357. Commander Parker said the mission would take no more than 6 months. We were investigating reports of hostile alien activity in this sector. The commander ordered me into stasis when our ship came under attack. He promised he would come back for me. Jake exchanged glances with his teammates. The current year was 2387. If Ranger was telling the truth, he had been waiting in that pod for 30 years. 30 years for a handler who had never returned. The implications were staggering, and Jake realized they had stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple archaeological discovery. They had found evidence of a secret military operation that had apparently been erased from all official records. More importantly, they had found a loyal companion who had been waiting 3 decades for his human partner to return. Ranger climbed carefully out of the stasis pod, his movements graceful despite the long period of inactivity. He was magnificent, clearly the result of advanced genetic and cybernetic enhancement. But beneath all the technology, he was still unmistakably a dog, complete with the loyalty and devotion that had made his species humanity's best friend for thousands of years. As Ranger looked around the empty facility with growing concern, Jake made a silent promise. Somehow, someway, he would help this remarkable creature find his missing handler. The mystery of Commander Ryan Parker and the secret mission that had brought them to this distant world was just beginning to unfold. Back at the research station, Jake sat across from Ranger in the medical bay while Lisa and Alex ran every test they could think of. The enhanced dog had remained calm throughout the journey back to base, but Jake could sense his growing anxiety about his missing handler. The cybernetic implants along Ranger's spine continued to pulse with soft blue light as various systems ran diagnostic checks. Dr. Susan Walsh, the station's chief medical officer, studied the readouts from her scanners with amazement. She had been working with alien biology for 15 years, but Ranger represented something entirely new. His genetic structure was unmistakably canine, yet it had been modified in ways that pushed the boundaries of what medical science thought possible. The implants were works of art as much as technology. They had been integrated into Ranger's nervous system so seamlessly that there was no way to remove them without causing severe damage. More importantly, they seemed to be enhancing his natural abilities rather than replacing them. His intelligence had been boosted to near-human levels while maintaining all his canine instincts and emotional responses. Ranger submitted to the tests patiently, but his attention kept drifting to the windows where he could see the alien landscape outside. Jake could tell he was searching for any sign of his handler's ship or equipment. The loyalty in his enhanced brown eyes was heartbreaking. Alex had been working to decode the data stored in Ranger's implants. The encryption was military-grade and far more advanced than anything in current use. However, some files were accessible, and what they contained painted a picture of a secret program that had operated at the very edges of human space. The files referred to something called Project Sentinel, a joint military and scientific initiative designed to investigate potential alien threats before they could reach human colonies. Teams consisting of enhanced soldiers and cybernetically upgraded animals had been deployed to distant star systems to gather intelligence and establish early warning networks. Ranger's service record was impressive. He had been partnered with Commander Ryan Parker for 3 years before their final mission to Kepler 442b. They had completed 17 successful reconnaissance operations together, often spending months alone in hostile environments. The bond between them had been legendary even among the other Sentinel teams. Jake read through the mission briefings with growing concern. The final operation had been classified at the highest levels, involving reports of unknown ships moving through this sector of space. Commander Parker and Ranger had been sent to investigate and establish a monitoring post on what was then an uninhabited world. According to the files, their ship had arrived at Kepler 442b without incident. They had begun setting up their observation equipment when long-range sensors detected multiple unidentified vessels approaching the system. Parker had immediately ordered Ranger into the emergency stasis pod while he attempted to hide their ship and equipment. The last entry in the mission log was brief and chilling. Parker had reported that the alien ships were not just passing through, they were establishing some kind of permanent installation on the planet's surface. He was going to investigate further before calling for backup. That was 30 years ago. Susan finished her medical examination and confirmed what Jake had suspected. Ranger was in perfect health despite 3 decades in stasis. His enhanced physiology had protected him from the usual effects of long-term suspended animation. His cybernetic systems had actually improved during the stasis period, running maintenance routines and upgrading software automatically. More remarkably, his emotional state remained stable despite the traumatic situation. The enhancements had strengthened his psychological resilience, while preserving his natural optimism and loyalty. He was still hoping, still believing that Parker would return for him. Lisa had been researching the historical records, trying to find any mention of Project Sentinel or Commander Parker. The official databases contained nothing, but she had learned to look in places where information might have been hidden rather than destroyed. Government archives, military pension records, and family genealogy databases sometimes contained fragments that had been missed during classification purges. She found the first clue in an old insurance claim filed by Parker's sister. The document mentioned her brother's death in a military training accident in 2357, the same year he had supposedly disappeared on the secret mission. It was clearly a cover story designed to provide his family with closure and benefits while hiding the truth about his fate. Alex had been monitoring communication frequencies, hoping to detect any signal from Parker's ship or equipment. The alien facility where they had found Ranger was still active, its power systems humming with unknown energy. But there were no human transmissions anywhere in the system. Ranger had been listening to their discussions through his neural interface, processing information at superhuman speeds while maintaining the patience that was natural to his species. When Jake asked him about the alien ships Parker had detected, his response provided crucial new information. The ships had not been hostile in the traditional sense. They had been prison transports, carrying captured beings from dozens of different worlds to some kind of detention facility. Parker had discovered that the aliens were systematically removing what they considered dangerous individuals from various species, including humans who showed exceptional courage or leadership abilities. The implications were staggering. If Parker had been captured rather than killed, he might still be alive somewhere in the galaxy. Ranger's enhanced senses and cybernetic systems had detected the unique energy signature of the prison ships, and that signature was stored in his memory banks. Jake made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days before. They were going to search for Commander Parker. The research mission could continue, but their primary goal would be tracking down the missing soldier who had been captured while defending human space. Susan objected immediately. The risks were enormous and they had no authority to conduct military operations. Lisa pointed out that they lacked the resources for an interstellar rescue mission. Alex worried about the alien technology they would be facing, but Ranger's response settled the debate. Speaking through the neural interface with quiet dignity, he explained that Parker had risked everything to protect human colonies from an unknown threat. The least they could do was try to find him and bring him home. The enhanced dog's loyalty was absolute and infectious. Jake found himself making plans that would have seemed insane just hours before. They would use the research station's resources to upgrade their ship for long-range travel. Lisa would research the prison ship signatures to determine possible destinations. Alex would modify their equipment for potential rescue operations. Most importantly, Ranger would guide them using the data stored in his cybernetic systems. His neural implants contained not just memories, but also tactical analysis software that could process vast amounts of information about alien technology and behavior patterns. Over the following days, the team worked with desperate efficiency. Jake submitted false reports to their supervisors, claiming they needed extended time to study the alien facility. Lisa hacked into classified databases, searching for any additional information about Project Sentinel or similar operations. Alex began modifying their ship's engines and defensive systems. Ranger contributed in ways that amazed them all. His enhanced intelligence allowed him to understand complex technical concepts, while his natural instincts provided insights that pure logic might miss. He could process multiple data streams simultaneously, while maintaining emotional stability that kept the team focused. The breakthrough came when Ranger accessed a hidden partition in his memory banks. The data had been encrypted by Parker himself as a failsafe in case something went wrong with their mission. It contained detailed scans of the alien prison ships, including their energy signatures, probable destinations, and weaknesses in their defensive systems. More importantly, it contained a message from Parker to Ranger. The recording was short but filled with affection for his loyal companion. Parker had known the mission was dangerous and had programmed the message in case he did not return. He told Ranger how proud he was of their partnership and asked him to be strong if something happened. Watching Ranger's reaction to his handler's voice was almost unbearable. The enhanced dog's emotional responses were amplified by his cybernetic systems, making his grief and hope visible as shifting patterns of light along his spine. Yet he maintained his composure, drawing strength from Parker's words and his own unshakable loyalty. Jake realized that Ranger represented something special about the relationship between humans and their animal companions. The technology had enhanced his abilities and intelligence, but it had not changed the fundamental bond that made him willing to wait 30 years for his partner's return. As their modified ship prepared for departure, Jake looked at his unlikely crew. Lisa clutched research materials about alien civilizations. Alex checked weapon systems he hoped they would never need to use. Ranger sat quietly, his enhanced senses already reaching out across space toward his missing handler. They were heading into unknown dangers with limited resources and no official support. But they had something that might be more valuable than weapons, or had the ship drifted through deep space 3 days after leaving. Kepler 442b. Jake watched the stars through the main view screen while Ranger lay beside his chair, the dog's cybernetic implants glowing softly as he processed data from the ship's sensors. The enhanced canine had been unusually quiet since they began their journey, and Jake could sense his growing anticipation mixed with deep concern. Lisa worked at her station, analyzing the alien prison ship data they had recovered from Ranger's memory banks. The information was detailed but disturbing. The ships belonged to a species that called themselves the Keepers, who believed they were maintaining galactic stability by removing dangerous individuals from various worlds before they could cause problems. Their definition of dangerous was broad and terrifying. Anyone who showed exceptional courage, leadership ability, or willingness to fight for their people was considered a threat. They had been operating for centuries, quietly kidnapping beings from dozens of species and transporting them to secret detention facilities scattered across the galaxy. Alex monitored their ship's modified systems while tracking the energy signatures Ranger had provided. The trail was faint after 30 years, but the enhanced dog's cybernetic systems could detect patterns that would be invisible to normal sensors. They were following a path that led toward the galaxy's outer rim, far from any human settlements. Ranger suddenly raised his head, his enhanced senses detecting something the ship's instruments had missed. Through the neural interface, his voice carried a note of excitement mixed with worry. He had found traces of Parker's ship, scattered debris that still carried his handler's unique scent signature after all these years. The debris field was small but significant. Pieces of human technology drifted among chunks of unknown alien materials, evidence of a battle that had taken place decades ago. Alex maneuvered their ship carefully through the wreckage, while Lisa and Jake analyzed what they found. Parker's ship had been severely damaged, but not destroyed. The pattern of debris suggested it had been disabled rather than blown apart, supporting Ranger's theory that the commander had been captured alive. More importantly, they found pieces of equipment that contained data about the alien ships Parker had been tracking. The information painted a clearer picture of what had happened. Parker had discovered that the Keepers were not just passing through human space. They were specifically targeting human military personnel who showed exceptional ability. Project Sentinel teams were particularly valuable to them because of their enhanced capabilities and tactical knowledge. Ranger's implants interfaced directly with the recovered data, processing information at incredible speed while his natural instincts provided context that pure analysis might miss. He could sense patterns in the alien behavior that reminded him of hunting strategies, as if the Keepers were tracking specific types of prey rather than conducting random raids. The trail led deeper into uncharted space, through regions where no human ships had ever traveled. Jake began to understand the scope of what they were attempting. The Keepers operated on a galactic scale, with resources and technology far beyond anything humanity possessed. Finding one captured human among their facilities would be like searching for a single grain of sand on an endless beach. But Ranger's determination never wavered. His bond with Parker transcended normal understanding, enhanced by cybernetic systems that had maintained perfect memories of their partnership. Every detail of their 3 years together remained crystal clear in his enhanced mind, providing motivation that no amount of logic could diminish. Lisa discovered something crucial in the alien data fragments. The Keepers were not a unified military force, but rather a collection of autonomous groups, each operating independently within their assigned territories. The group that had captured Parker specialized in human subjects and operated from a fixed base in a region of space that human astronomers had designated as the Void. The Void was an area where normal space seemed distorted, making navigation extremely difficult and long-range communication impossible. Most species avoided it entirely, which made it a perfect location for secret operations. If Parker was still alive, he would be held in a facility somewhere within that dark region. Alex began modifying their ship's navigation systems for the dangerous journey ahead. The Void's gravitational anomalies would make normal, faster-than-light travel impossible, forcing them to use slower but more stable propulsion methods. The trip would take weeks rather than days, and they would be completely cut off from any possibility of rescue or support. Ranger spent hours each day accessing his memory files, reviewing every mission he and Parker had completed together. The cybernetic systems allowed him to experience these memories with perfect clarity, as if he was reliving each moment. Jake watched the patterns of light dancing along the dog's spine and realized he was drawing strength from his connection to his missing handler. The memories revealed the depth of the partnership between human and enhanced animal. Parker had treated Ranger as an equal partner rather than just a trained animal, consulting him on tactical decisions and trusting his enhanced senses completely. In return, Ranger had provided loyalty that went far beyond normal training or programming. Their relationship had been tested during their most dangerous mission, when they had spent 2 months alone on a hostile world while tracking an alien weapons smuggling operation. Parker had been injured during the investigation, and Ranger had kept him alive through careful nursing and protection while maintaining surveillance on their targets. That mission had forged a bond that transcended species barriers. They had learned to communicate almost telepathically, with Ranger's enhanced intelligence allowing him to understand complex tactical situations, while Parker learned to interpret the subtle signals from his canine partner. By the time they returned to base, they functioned as a single unit rather than separate individuals. Jake began to understand why Ranger had waited 30 years without losing hope. The bond between him and Parker was not just emotional but practical. based on mutual respect and shared experiences that had proven their partnership worked under the most extreme conditions. As they approached the edge of the void, the ship's instruments began registering strange readings. Space itself seemed different here, with energy patterns that followed no known physical laws. Alex had to constantly adjust their course as gravitational fields shifted without warning, threatening to tear the ship apart if they moved too quickly. Ranger's enhanced senses proved invaluable in navigating the treacherous region. His cybernetic systems could detect patterns in the chaotic energy fields that allowed Alex to plot a safer course through the gravitational maze. Without the dog's guidance, they would have been lost within hours of entering the void. The journey through the distorted space took 2 weeks of careful navigation. During that time, Jake watched Ranger grow more focused and determined. The dog's systems were detecting faint traces of human presence somewhere ahead, signals so weak that normal sensors could not register them at all. Lisa worked constantly to decode the alien technology they had recovered, searching for any information about the Keeper facilities. She discovered that the prison complex they were seeking was designed to hold the most dangerous captives, individuals whose capabilities made them too valuable to kill, but too risky to release. The facility was heavily defended and completely isolated from the outside galaxy. Prisoners were kept in a state of controlled suspension that allowed the Keepers to study their abilities while preventing any possibility of escape. Many had been held for decades or even centuries, their existence known only to their captors. Alex prepared their limited weapons and defensive systems for what would certainly be an impossible mission. They were one small ship against a facility designed to hold beings from dozens of advanced species. Their only advantages were surprise and Ranger's unique abilities, neither of which seemed sufficient for the task ahead. But as they approached their destination, Ranger's confidence seemed to grow stronger. His neural interface carried a sense of certainty that puzzled Jake until he realized what the dog was experiencing. After 30 years of separation, Ranger could sense Parker's presence somewhere ahead, faint but unmistakably real. The prison facility appeared on their sensors as they emerged from the worst of the void's distortions. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon with defenses that could destroy a fleet of warships. Energy barriers surrounded the complex while automated weapon platforms patrolled its perimeter. Yet Ranger showed no fear as he studied the imposing structure. His enhanced senses had detected something the others had missed, a weakness in the seemingly impregnable defenses. The Keepers had designed their facility to prevent escape from within, but they had not expected anyone to attempt a rescue from outside. More importantly, Ranger had found what he had been searching for through 30 years of patient waiting. Somewhere within that dark fortress, Commander Ryan Parker was still alive, still waiting for the loyal partner who had never stopped believing in their bond. Jake looked at his small crew and their enhance. Jake stared at the massive prison complex floating in the darkness ahead of them, while Ranger's cybernetic systems analyzed every detail of its structure. The facility was unlike anything in human databases, a sprawling network of interconnected modules that seemed to grow organically rather than following any logical design pattern. Each section was heavily armored and protected by energy shields that could deflect the most powerful weapons. Alex worked frantically at his station, trying to find some weakness in the defensive grid. The automated weapons platforms that surrounded the complex were ancient but still deadly, their targeting systems designed to track multiple threats simultaneously. A direct assault would be suicide for a ship their size, yet they had no other options for reaching the prisoners inside. Lisa had been studying the architectural scans from Ranger's enhanced sensors, looking for patterns that might reveal the facility's purpose and layout. What she found was disturbing beyond her worst expectations. The prison was not just a detention center, but a research facility where the Keepers studied the capabilities of dangerous individuals from across the galaxy. The complex was divided into species-specific sections, each designed to contain beings with particular abilities or psychological profiles. The human section was relatively small but heavily secured, suggesting that the Keepers considered human prisoners especially valuable or dangerous. According to the sensor readings, it currently held approximately 50 individuals from various human colonies and military units. Ranger's implants had been working continuously since they arrived, processing massive amounts of data, while his natural instincts guided their analysis. He had confirmed Parker's presence in the human section, but the readings also revealed something troubling. His handler's life signs were weak, suggesting either injury or the effects of long-term imprisonment. The dog's emotional response to this discovery was visible as fluctuations in the light patterns along his spine. His loyalty remained absolute, but Jake could sense his growing desperation to reach his handler before it was too late. 30 years of separation had tested Ranger's patience to its limits, and now he knew that time was running out. Jake made the decision that would determine their fate. They could not assault the complex directly, but they might be able to infiltrate it using the same stealth technology that had allowed Parker to operate undetected for so long. Their ship carried modified systems based on Project Sentinel equipment, including cloaking devices that could fool most sensor arrays. The plan was desperate but simple. They would use the facility's own defensive systems against it by approaching from the direction of one of the weapon platforms. If they could position themselves correctly, the prison's sensors would register them as part of the defensive grid rather than an intruding vessel. Alex began the delicate process of mimicking the energy signature of a Keeper patrol ship, while Lisa worked to decode the alien communication protocols. Ranger's cybernetic systems proved invaluable in understanding the complex data streams that flowed between the various components of the defensive network. The enhanced dog's ability to process information at superhuman speeds allowed him to identify patterns in the alien communications that would have taken human analysts weeks to decode. More importantly, his natural instincts helped him understand the behavioral patterns of the guards and automated systems, knowledge that would be crucial for navigating the facility's interior. Their modified approach worked better than Jake had dared hope. The weapon platforms registered their ship as a returning patrol vessel and allowed them to pass through the outer defensive perimeter without challenge. However, they still faced the problem of actually entering the prison complex without triggering internal security systems. Ranger provided the solution through careful analysis of the facility's docking procedures. The Keepers used automated transport ships to move prisoners between different sections of the complex, and these vessels followed predictable schedules that his enhanced systems had decoded from the communications traffic. By timing their approach to coincide with a scheduled prisoner transfer, they could dock at one of the transport bays and enter the facility disguised as part of the regular operations. The risk was enormous because any deviation from normal procedures would trigger immediate security responses, but it was their only chance of reaching the human prisoners. Lisa had been working on another crucial element of their plan. The facility's internal layout was designed to confuse and disorient prisoners who might attempt escape, with constantly changing corridors and false passages that led nowhere. However, Ranger's enhanced senses could detect the subtle differences in airflow and acoustic properties that revealed the true paths through the maze. Alex prepared their limited equipment for what would essentially be a stealth mission in hostile territory. They had no hope of fighting their way through the facility's defenses, so everything depended on remaining undetected until they could locate and free the human prisoners. Their modified Project Sentinel gear would help, but success would ultimately depend on Ranger's abilities and their own determination. The docking procedure required precise timing and nerve-wracking attention to detail. Jake piloted their ship through the complex approach pattern, while Alex masked their energy signature to match that of a Keeper transport vessel. One mistake would bring the entire defensive grid down on them before they could even attempt a rescue. Ranger remained calm throughout the dangerous approach, his enhanced systems monitoring multiple data streams while his natural instincts evaluated the emotional state of their captors. He could sense the routine boredom of guards who had not faced a real threat in decades, knowledge that would help them move through the facility without attracting attention. The docking bay was vast and dimly lit, designed to accommodate ships much larger than their modified research vessel. Automated systems guided them to a berth near several genuine Keeper transports, while loading robots moved containers of supplies and equipment between ships and storage areas. Jake felt his heart racing as they powered down their engines and waited for the bay's atmospheric processors to create a breathable environment around their ship. Everything now depended on their ability to pass as authorized personnel while searching for prisoners who might be held anywhere within the enormous complex. Lisa had prepared identification documents based on data they had recovered from the alien computer systems. But she had no way of knowing whether the forgeries would fool the sophisticated security scanners used throughout the facility. Alex carried equipment designed to disable electronic locks and surveillance systems, though again they could only hope their human technology would work against alien security measures. Ranger would be their most valuable asset during the infiltration. His enhanced senses could detect human presence at great distances, while his cybernetic systems interfaced with the facility's computer networks to provide real-time information about guard movements and security protocols. They prepared to leave their ship. Jake looked at his unlikely team and realized how much they had all changed during their journey into the void. Lisa had evolved from a cautious academic into a determined rescuer, willing to risk everything for strangers she had never met. Alex had transformed from a security technician into a guerrilla fighter, ready to assault an alien fortress with improvised weapons. But the greatest change had been in Ranger himself. The loyal dog who had waited patiently for 30 years had become something more, a symbol of the unbreakable bonds that connected all sentient beings regardless of species or origin. His determination to find Parker had inspired them all to attempt something that should have been impossible. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and they stepped into the alien facility that held Commander Ryan Parker and dozens of other human prisoners. The corridors were dimly lit and filled with the constant hum of unknown machinery, while strange symbols marked passages that led deeper into the complex. Ranger immediately began tracking Parker's scent, his enhanced olfactory systems cutting through decades of accumulated odors to find the familiar trace of his handler. The trail was faint but unmistakable, leading through a maze of passages toward the heart of the human detention section. Jake followed the enhanced dog through corridors that seemed designed to break the spirit of anyone forced to walk them. The architecture was deliberately unsettling, with walls that curved in impossible directions and lighting that created disorienting shadows. But Ranger moved with confidence, his cybernetic systems mapping their route while his natural instincts guided them away from areas where guards might be stationed. As they penetrated deeper into the facility, Jake began to understand the true scope of the Keeper's operation. This was not just a prison, but a research center where captured beings were studied and their abilities cataloged for future use. The implications were terrifying, suggesting a level of galactic manipulation that had gone undetected for centuries. But those concerns faded as Ranger's systems detected something that made his entire frame tremble with anticipation. They were close now, very close to the human they had traveled across the galaxy to find. After 30 years of separation, the loyal dog was about to be reunited with his beloved handler. The question that remained was, the human detention section lay behind 3 layers of security that would have stopped any normal rescue attempt. Jake watched Alex work on the electronic locks while Ranger's cybernetic systems interfaced with the alien computer networks, his enhanced abilities providing access codes that should have been impossible to obtain. The facility's architects had never imagined that a dog could break their most sophisticated encryption. Lisa monitored the corridors for guards while studying the internal layout on her portable scanner. The human section was smaller than she had expected but far more complex, with multiple levels connected by passages that seemed to shift and change according to some unknown schedule. The Keepers had designed it to prevent any possibility of organized resistance or escape attempts. Ranger's excitement grew stronger as they penetrated each security barrier. His enhanced senses could detect Parker's presence more clearly now, along with dozens of other humans who had been imprisoned for crimes against galactic stability. The sense told a story of courage and defiance that had lasted through decades of captivity. The first detention level contained mostly recent captures, humans who had been imprisoned within the past few years for showing exceptional leadership during conflicts with alien species. They were kept in individual cells that monitored their psychological state while subjecting them to various forms of conditioning designed to break their will to resist. Jake felt sick as he observed the sophisticated torture methods being used on his fellow humans. The Keepers did not rely on physical abuse but rather on psychological manipulation that attacked the very foundations of human identity and purpose. Many of the prisoners showed signs of deep depression and hopelessness that spoke to the effectiveness of their captors' methods. But not all had been broken. As they moved deeper into the facility, Ranger's systems detected pockets of resistance where prisoners had somehow maintained their humanity despite years or decades of imprisonment. These individuals had found ways to communicate and support each other, creating networks of hope that the keepers had been unable to destroy. Alex's equipment proved more effective than expected against the alien security systems. The keepers had built their technology to contain beings with various supernatural abilities, but they had not anticipated human engineering creativity combined with enhanced animal senses. Ranger's ability to predict guard movements allowed them to avoid detection while accessing restricted areas. The second detention level-held prisoners who had been classified as extremely dangerous due to their military or scientific expertise. These individuals were kept in deeper isolation, their cells equipped with more sophisticated monitoring and conditioning systems. Many had been imprisoned for decades, their existence known only to their captors and fellow prisoners. Jake found records of Project Sentinel personnel among the detention files, confirming that the keepers had specifically targeted the enhanced human-animal teams for capture. The aliens had recognized the unique threat posed by the close cooperation between humans and their enhanced companions, viewing such partnerships as particularly dangerous to their plans for galactic control. Ranger's emotional state fluctuated wildly as they approached the deepest level of the human section. His cybernetic systems were detecting not just Parker's presence but also his current condition, and the readings were concerning. 30 years of imprisonment had taken a severe toll on the commander's physical and mental health. The final security barrier required all of their combined abilities to overcome. Alex's technical skills, Lisa's knowledge of alien cultures, and Ranger's cybernetic interface capabilities were barely sufficient to crack the advanced encryption protecting the most dangerous prisoners. As the massive doors finally opened, they stepped into a section that felt different from the rest of the facility. This level housed prisoners who had never been broken despite decades of the most sophisticated conditioning techniques available to the keepers. These were individuals whose strength of character had proven immune to psychological manipulation, making them both valuable research subjects and constant sources of frustration for their captors. The cells here were larger but more heavily monitored, each one a complete environment designed to maintain prisoners in optimal physical condition, while studying their psychological resistance mechanisms. The level was also equipped with emergency systems that could flood the entire section with paralyzing gas if any escape attempt was detected. Ranger's systems locked onto Parker's location immediately. Cell 247 held a human whose genetic and psychological profile matched his handler perfectly. But the readings also revealed changes that 30 years of imprisonment had inevitably caused. The man they were about to rescue would not be exactly the same person who had ordered Ranger into stasis 3 decades ago. Jake felt his heart racing as they approached the cell. Everything they had risked, everything they had sacrificed would be meaningless if Parker had been broken by his long captivity. Ranger seemed to sense his concern, sending reassurance through the neural interface that their bond transcended any changes time might have caused. The cell door was transparent, allowing them to see inside before they attempted entry. Jake gasped at what he found. Commander Ryan Parker sat on a simple cot, his hair now completely gray and his face marked by decades of hardship. But his eyes remained alert and defiant, showing no signs of the hopelessness that had marked so many other prisoners. Parker had clearly maintained his physical condition through exercise and determination, though the years had left their mark on his frame. More importantly, he had preserved his mental discipline, continuing to plan and analyze even when hope seemed impossible. The keepers had failed to break the man who had partnered with an enhanced dog to protect human space. Ranger's reaction to seeing his handler was immediate and overwhelming. The cybernetic implants along his spine blazed with light as emotion flooded through his enhanced systems. 30 years of patient waiting culminated in this moment, when loyalty was finally rewarded with the sight of the human he had never stopped believing in. But Parker did not immediately recognize the dog at the cell door. 3 decades had changed Ranger as well, his cybernetic enhancements now more integrated and sophisticated than when they had last served together. The enhanced animal who gazed at him through the transparent barrier was clearly the same species but seemed almost alien in his advanced modifications. Alex began working on the cell's locking mechanism while Lisa monitored for approaching guards. The security systems were more advanced than anything they had encountered, requiring multiple authentication steps and biometric verification that their forged identification could not provide. Success would depend entirely on Ranger's ability to interface directly. With the alien technology, the enhanced dog systems worked frantically to decode the lock's programming, while his emotional state remained focused on the human just meters away. Parker watched this activity with growing interest, his tactical mind analyzing the situation and beginning to understand that rescue was actually possible. After 30 years of captivity, recognition dawned slowly in Parker's eyes as he studied Ranger's distinctive markings and behavioral patterns. The cybernetic enhancements were new, but the intelligence and loyalty visible in the dog's brown eyes were unmistakably familiar. After 3 decades of separation, the commander was looking at his faithful partner who had somehow found him across the galaxy. The cell door finally opened with a soft click as Ranger's systems successfully convinced the lock that proper authorization had been provided. Parker stood slowly, his movements careful after so many years of confinement, and took his first step toward freedom in 3 decades. Jake held his breath as human and enhanced dog faced each other across a gap that represented 30 years of separation and suffering. So much had changed for both of them, yet the fundamental bond that had made them legendary partners remained intact beneath all the modifications and hardships. Ranger moved forward cautiously, his enhanced senses analyzing every detail of Parker's condition, while his emotional systems processed the reality of their reunion. The man he had waited for was older, scarred by captivity, but unmistakably the same human who had earned his absolute loyalty through years of shared danger and mutual respect. Parker knelt slowly and extended his hand toward his long-lost partner. His voice was hoarse from disuse but filled with wonder as he spoke the name he had not said aloud for 30 years. The sound triggered responses in Ranger's memory systems that brought flooding back every moment of their partnership, every mission they had completed together. The reunion that followed would have brought tears to Jake's eyes if he had not been focused on the immediate danger of their situation. Ranger's joy was visible as cascading patterns of light along his cybernetic implants, while Parker's tactical discipline cracked just enough to show the profound relief of a man who had never stopped hoping for rescue. But their celebration was cut short by alarms that began sounding throughout the facility. Something had triggered the security systems, and they could hear the heavy footsteps of guards responding to the alarms screamed through the detention facility as keeper guards rushed toward the human section. Parker moved with surprising speed despite his long imprisonment, his tactical instincts immediately taking control of the rescue operation. Jake watched in amazement as the commander assessed their situation and began issuing orders with the authority that had made him legendary among Project Sentinel. Ranger's cybernetic systems interfaced with the facility's security network, providing real-time information about guard movements and defensive systems. The enhanced dog's abilities had grown far beyond what Parker remembered, but their partnership resumed as if 30 years had been 30 minutes. Communication flowed between them through subtle gestures and shared glances that spoke to their deep understanding. The detention level contained 47 other human prisoners, and Parker made it clear that none would be left behind. These were individuals who had maintained their resistance despite decades of sophisticated conditioning, and their knowledge would be invaluable for understanding the true scope of the keeper threat to human space. Lisa worked frantically to unlock the remaining cells, while Alex prepared their limited weapons for the fight ahead. The keeper guards were heavily armed and equipped with technology designed to subdue beings with various supernatural abilities. However, they had never faced the tactical genius of a human commander working with an enhanced animal partner. Parker's first priority was arming his fellow prisoners with equipment stolen from guard stations. Many of these individuals were former military personnel who had been captured during conflicts throughout human space. Despite years of imprisonment, their training remained intact, and they quickly organized into effective combat units under Parker's command. Ranger's enhanced senses provided crucial intelligence about the facility's layout and the movement of enemy forces. His cybernetic systems could track individual guards through walls and predict their tactical responses with remarkable accuracy. This information allowed Parker to position his forces for maximum effectiveness, despite being heavily outnumbered. The first engagement came as Keeper forces tried to seal off the detention level. Parker's improvised army struck with precision that surprised their captors, using knowledge of the facility's design to turn defensive systems against the guards themselves. Alex's technical expertise proved invaluable in sabotaging alien equipment, while Ranger's abilities provided coordination that human military units could only dream of achieving. Jake found himself in the middle of a running battle through corridors designed to confuse and disorient prisoners. But with Parker's tactical leadership and Ranger's enhanced senses providing navigation, the human forces moved through the maze-like facility with purpose and direction that their captors could not match. The freed prisoners included specialists in various fields who had been captured specifically for their expertise. Dr. Helen Ross had been imprisoned for developing defensive technologies that threatened Keeper expansion plans. Colonel Steve Burton had been taken after leading successful resistance operations on 3 different worlds. Engineer Paul Martinez possessed knowledge of alien technology that the Keepers had been trying to extract for decades. Each liberated human added to their combat effectiveness and knowledge base. More importantly, they represented decades of accumulated intelligence about Keeper operations throughout the galaxy. Their testimonies would expose the systematic campaign of kidnapping and imprisonment that had been hidden from galactic authorities for centuries. Ranger's emotional state remained focused despite the chaos of combat. 30 years of separation had ended, but his loyalty to Parker now extended to protecting all the humans under his commander's leadership. The enhanced dog moved through the facility like a guardian spirit, his cybernetic systems coordinating defensive actions while his natural instincts provided early warning of threats. Parker's tactical genius became apparent as the battle progressed. He had spent 30 years studying the facility's layout and guard procedures, planning for an escape that had seemed impossible until Ranger's arrival provided the missing element. Now he moved his forces through carefully selected routes that avoided the heaviest defensive positions while targeting critical systems. The Keepers had never faced organized resistance from within their facility. Their security procedures were designed to prevent individual escape attempts, not coordinated military action by trained personnel. Parker exploited these weaknesses ruthlessly, turning the prison's own defenses against its guards, while opening escape routes for his growing army. Alex discovered that the facility's computer systems were vulnerable to the same techniques that had allowed them to infiltrate the complex. Ranger's cybernetic abilities could access control systems that governed everything from life support to defensive barriers. By selectively disabling these systems, they created chaos that gave the human forces crucial advantages. Lisa's knowledge of alien cultures proved valuable in understanding Keeper psychology and predicting their responses to the prison break. The aliens operated according to rigid protocols that assumed their technology was superior to anything prisoners might possess. They had never anticipated the creative destruction that humans could achieve when properly motivated. The running battle reached the facility's main transport hub, where dozens of ships sat ready for immediate departure. Parker's objective was not just escape, but acquisition of vessels that could carry all the freed prisoners back to human space. The hub was heavily defended, but his forces had grown to include nearly 50 determined individuals with decades of motivation for revenge. Ranger's systems detected the approach of reinforcements from other parts of the complex. The Keepers were finally responding to the prison break with appropriate force, bringing in guards equipped with weapons designed to stop enhanced beings. The window for escape was closing rapidly, and Parker would need all his tactical skill to get his people out alive. The battle for the transport hub was fierce but brief. Parker's forces struck with coordinated precision that overwhelmed the guards before they could organize effective resistance. Decades of imprisonment had not dulled the military expertise of the human prisoners, and their determination to escape gave them advantages that no amount of superior technology could overcome. Jake found himself piloting one of the captured transport ships while freed prisoners secured the rest of the fleet. Parker coordinated the evacuation with the same efficiency he had shown during their combat operations, ensuring that every human would escape while maximizing their intelligence-gathering opportunities. Ranger remained at Parker's side throughout the evacuation, his enhanced systems monitoring threats while his emotional state reflected the joy of working with his beloved handler again. The partnership that had been legendary among Project Sentinel teams was proving its worth on a scale that neither had imagined possible. As the liberated fleet prepared to depart, the facility's defensive systems finally activated with full force. Energy barriers surrounded the transport hub, while automated weapons platforms targeted the escaping ships. Parker had anticipated this response and positioned his forces to exploit weaknesses in the defensive grid that 30 years of observation had revealed. The escape itself was a masterpiece of tactical coordination. Parker's fleet moved through the defensive perimeter, using flight patterns that confused the automated targeting systems, while Ranger's cybernetic abilities provided jamming that disrupted Keeper communications. What should have been a suicidal run through overwhelming defenses became a carefully orchestrated withdrawal that left their captors stunned. Jake watched the prison facility falling behind them and realized they had accomplished something extraordinary. Not only had they rescued Commander Parker after 30 years of imprisonment, but they had liberated nearly 50 other humans while dealing a devastating blow to Keeper operations in this sector of space. But Parker was already focused on the larger implications of their success. The intelligence they had gathered about Keeper operations would revolutionize human understanding of galactic politics. More importantly, the liberated prisoners represented decades of accumulated expertise that could be used to develop defenses against future alien threats. Rangers systems monitored the pursuit that would inevitably follow their escape. The Keepers could not allow such a massive intelligence breach to reach human space, and they would commit significant resources to preventing the fleet from reaching safety. The real test of Parker's tactical abilities was just beginning. As they entered the chaotic space of the void, Jake felt a mixture of triumph and concern. They had achieved the impossible by rescuing Parker and his fellow prisoners, but getting home alive would require all the skills that had made the human-dog partnership legendary throughout Project Sentinel. The most dangerous part of their mission was about to begin. The journey through the void became a running battle as Keeper pursuit ships closed in on the escaping fleet. Parker coordinated defensive actions from the lead transport, while Ranger's enhanced systems provided tactical data that kept them one step ahead of their pursuers. The chaotic gravitational fields that made the region dangerous for normal navigation now worked in their favor, as the enhanced dog's abilities allowed them to plot courses that their enemies could not follow. Jake piloted his transport through impossible maneuvers, guided by Ranger's cybernetic calculations. The enhanced animal's connection to both the ship's systems and the natural forces of the void created navigation capabilities that bordered on supernatural. Behind them, Keeper ships struggled to match their seemingly random course changes while weapons fire lit up the distorted space around them. The freed prisoners proved their worth during the running battle. Dr. Helen Ross had jury-rigged the transport's defensive systems using principles that made Keeper weapons less effective. Colonel Steve Burton commanded the other ships with tactical precision that maximized their limited firepower. Engineer Paul Martinez found ways to boost their engines beyond safe operational limits, giving them speed advantages their pursuers had not expected. Parker's tactical genius showed in how he used the void's unique properties against their enemies. The region's gravitational anomalies created natural choke points where superior numbers meant nothing, while energy distortions masked their true positions from Keeper sensors. What should have been a hopeless flight became a chess match, where human creativity challenged alien technology. Ranger's emotional state remained stable despite the constant danger. Being reunited with Parker had restored something essential in his enhanced personality, a sense of purpose that transcended even his sophisticated programming. The loyal dog who had waited 30 years was now protecting not just his beloved handler but dozens of humans who had suffered under alien captivity. The pursuit lasted 3 days through the twisting passages of the void. Parker used every trick he had learned during his Project Sentinel career, plus new techniques developed during decades of studying Keeper technology. Their enemies had superior ships and weapons, but they lacked the desperate creativity that drove humans fighting for their freedom. Lisa worked constantly to decode Keeper communications, providing intelligence about their pursuers' intentions and capabilities. The aliens were not just trying to recapture escaped prisoners. They were attempting to prevent a catastrophic intelligence leak that could expose their operations throughout the galaxy. The stakes were higher than anyone had realized. Alex managed to extract crucial data from captured Keeper equipment, during brief stops to repair battle damage. The information revealed the true scope of alien prison operations, with facilities scattered across dozens of star systems holding thousands of beings from various species. The rescue at the Void facility was just the beginning of what needed to be a much larger liberation effort. As they finally emerged from the Void into normal space, the Keeper pursuit suddenly intensified. Fresh ships arrived to reinforce the original hunters, creating a blockade that seemed impossible to break. Parker's fleet was outnumbered 10-1 by vessels equipped with technology far beyond anything humans possessed. But Rangers' enhanced senses detected something their enemies had missed. A human patrol fleet was operating in this sector, conducting routine security sweeps along the outer frontier. The ships were too far away to have detected the battle, but they represented potential salvation if Parker could find a way to contact them without alerting the Keepers to their presence. The solution came from an unexpected source. Dr. Ross had been working on communication techniques that could penetrate Keeper jamming systems, and her modifications to their equipment allowed them to send a narrow beam transmission that reached the human fleet without being intercepted by their pursuers. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The human patrol fleet included ships from Project Sentinel's successor programs, vessels equipped with enhanced animals and crews trained in the same tactics that had made Parker legendary. When they detected the distress signal and realized who was sending it, they responded with everything they had. The battle that followed became known as the engagement at Kepler's Edge, the first open conflict between human and Keeper forces in galactic history. Parker's tactical expertise proved crucial in coordinating the combined fleet actions, while Ranger's cybernetic abilities provided communication, links that allowed unprecedented cooperation between different ship types and crews. Jake watched in amazement as human creativity and determination overcame superior alien technology. The Keeper ships were individually more powerful, but they operated according to rigid tactical doctrines that could not adapt to the chaos of human innovation. Every captured prison transport became a weapons platform as freed. Prisoners used their decades of accumulated knowledge to turn alien technology against its creators. The tide of battle turned when Ranger's systems detected a critical weakness in the Keeper command ship's defensive grid. The enhanced dog's ability to process multiple data streams simultaneously revealed a pattern that human analysts would have taken hours to identify. Parker immediately exploited this information, leading a coordinated strike that disabled the enemy flagship and threw their entire fleet into confusion. The Keeper retreat was as sudden as their arrival had been overwhelming. Faced with tactics they could not counter and losses they had not anticipated, the aliens withdrew to reassess their strategy. For the first time in centuries, their operations had been directly challenged by organized resistance from their intended victims. Parker's reunion with the human fleet was emotional beyond anything Jake had witnessed. The commander had been presumed dead for 30 years, yet here he was leading nearly 50 liberated prisoners in the most significant intelligence coup in galactic history. But the real attention focused on Ranger, whose loyalty and enhanced abilities had made the entire rescue possible. The enhanced dog's response to the celebration was typically modest. He remained at Parker's side, his cybernetic systems monitoring for potential threats while his emotional state reflected quiet satisfaction at having fulfilled his primary programming. 30 years of patient waiting had been rewarded not just with reunion but with vindication of the bond between human and animal that made Project Sentinel possible. Dr. Ross immediately began sharing her research findings with the fleet's scientific personnel, revealing techniques that could revolutionize human defensive capabilities. Colonel Burton provided tactical intelligence that would change how human forces prepared for alien threats. Engineer Martinez offered insights into Keeper technology that opened entirely new fields of research and development. But the most important intelligence came from Parker himself. 30 years of imprisonment had given him unprecedented access to Keeper operations and psychology. He understood their strategic goals, their operational methods, and most crucially, their weaknesses. His knowledge would reshape human approaches to galactic politics and military planning. Ranger's contribution was equally valuable, but harder to quantify. His enhanced systems contained detailed records of Keeper facilities, communication protocols, and defensive systems that no human could have acquired. More importantly, His successful interface with alien technology proved that enhanced animals could be even more valuable than previously believed. As the combined fleet prepared for the journey back to human space, Jake reflected on everything that had changed since they discovered Ranger in that stasis pod. What had begun as a simple research mission had become a rescue operation that exposed galactic conspiracies and demonstrated the unbreakable bonds between species. Parker spent hours with Ranger, re-establishing their partnership while marveling at the enhancements that had been developed during their separation. The dog's abilities had grown far beyond what either had imagined possible, yet the fundamental loyalty and trust between them remained unchanged. If anything, 30 years of separation had strengthened their bond by proving its durability. The journey home would take weeks through the safer but slower routes that avoided Keeper patrol areas. During that time, the liberated prisoners would share their knowledge with human intelligence services while preparing for the inevitable alien response to their escape. The galaxy had changed overnight, and humanity would need every advantage to survive what was coming. But as Jake watched Parker and Ranger working together to plan humanity's defense against alien threats, he felt optimistic about their chances. The bond between human and dog had already achieved the impossible once, and there was no reason to believe it could not do so again. The real test would come when the Keepers realized that their secret operations had been exposed and began preparing for open warfare against the species that had dared to challenge their authority. When that day came, humanity would face it with the knowledge that loyalty and determination could overcome any technological advantage. The rescue mission was complete, but the larger battle for galactic freedom was just beginning. 6 months after the rescue at the Void facility, Jake stood in the observation deck of humanity's newest space station, watching Parker and Ranger conduct training exercises with the next generation of enhanced animal teams. The bond between human and dog had become the foundation for an entirely new approach to galactic defense, one that emphasized cooperation and loyalty over pure technological superiority. The galactic political landscape had transformed completely since Parker's return. His testimony before the Galactic Council had exposed the Keeper prison network and led to the liberation of thousands of beings from dozens of species. The revelation that aliens had been systematically kidnapping individuals deemed dangerous to their expansion. Plans had shocked civilizations throughout known space and created an unprecedented alliance against Keeper operations. Ranger had become something of a legend himself, his story spreading through human space as an example of loyalty that transcended time and distance. But the enhanced dog remained focused on practical matters, working with Parker to develop training protocols that would prepare new human-animal teams for the challenges ahead. His cybernetic systems had been upgraded with technology recovered from the Keeper facility, giving him capabilities that bordered on the miraculous. The intelligence gathered during the rescue mission had revolutionized human understanding of galactic politics. Dr. Ross's research had led to defensive technologies that made human colonies far more secure against alien infiltration. Colonel Burton's tactical knowledge had been incorporated into military training programs throughout human space. Engineer Martinez's insights into Keeper technology had opened new fields of research that promised to level the playing field between humans and their technologically superior enemies, but the most significant change had been psychological. The successful rescue had proven that humans could challenge alien authority and win, inspiring resistance movements throughout the galaxy while encouraging other species to stand up against Keeper oppression. The prison break had become a symbol of hope for beings who had lived in fear of alien abduction for centuries. Jake had been promoted to head of the new Interspecies Liberation Program, coordinating rescue operations for beings still held in Keeper facilities throughout the galaxy. The work was dangerous and complex, requiring cooperation between species that had never worked together before. But the results had been remarkable. Dozens of facilities had been liberated, and hundreds of prisoners had been returned to their homeworlds. Parker had accepted command of the reformed Project Sentinel, now expanded to include enhanced animals from multiple species working with human partners. The program had grown from a small military experiment to the backbone of galactic defense against alien threats, with teams operating throughout known space to protect vulnerable civilizations from Keeper expansion. The partnership between Parker and Ranger remained at the heart of everything they accomplished. 30 years of separation had only strengthened their bond, proving that some connections transcend individual experience to become something larger and more enduring. Their work together inspired others to form similar partnerships, creating a network of cooperation that spanned species barriers. Lisa had become the galaxy's leading expert on keeper psychology and culture, using her knowledge to predict alien responses to liberation efforts and develop strategies for countering their operations. Her research had revealed that the keepers were not a unified species, but rather a collection of groups united by their belief in galactic stability through control. This knowledge had proven crucial in turning different keeper factions against each other. Alex had founded a technical institute dedicated to reverse engineering captured alien technology and developing countermeasures against keeper weapons and surveillance systems. His innovations had made liberation operations far more successful while providing defensive capabilities that protected human colonies from alien retaliation. The response from keeper leadership had been swift and brutal. Open warfare had erupted across multiple sectors as alien forces attempted to recapture liberated prisoners and destroy the evidence of their prison operations. But they found themselves facing an enemy far different from the passive victims they had been kidnapping for centuries. Human forces fought with the desperate creativity that had always been their greatest strength, supported by enhanced animals whose abilities complemented human tactics perfectly. The combination proved devastatingly effective against aliens who had relied on technological superiority to maintain their dominance. More importantly, the liberation movement had inspired other species to join the fight against keeper oppression. Beings who had been systematically targeted for kidnapping and imprisonment found common cause with humanity, creating a galactic alliance that challenged alien control throughout known space. The war was far from over, but momentum had shifted decisively toward the liberation forces. Every successful rescue operation provided intelligence that led to more facilities being discovered and liberated. Every freed prisoner brought knowledge that helped develop better tactics and defensive measures. The keeper network that had operated in secret for centuries was being systematically dismantled by the very beings it had been designed to control. Jake often visited the memorial that had been erected at the site where they first discovered Ranger. The simple monument honored all the enhanced animals who had served alongside human partners, but it held special meaning for those who understood the story of loyalty and determination that had sparked the galactic liberation movement. The inscription read simply, "To Ranger and all who wait faithfully for their partners to return." But those words carried the weight of a revolution that had changed the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Parker and Ranger continued their work together, training new teams while planning operations that would free the remaining prisoners held in keeper facilities. Their partnership had evolved beyond its original military focus to become something that inspired cooperation between all sentient beings who valued freedom over control. The enhanced dog's emotional responses had stabilized completely since his reunion with Parker. The cybernetic systems that monitored his psychological state showed patterns of contentment and purpose that reflected his fulfillment at being reunited with his beloved handler. But more than that, they revealed the satisfaction of a being who had played a crucial role in liberating thousands of others from alien oppression. As Jake watched Parker and Ranger working with a new team of human canine partners, he reflected on how much had changed since that day when they opened a mysterious stasis pod on a distant world. What had seemed like a simple archaeological discovery had become the catalyst for a galactic revolution that challenged the fundamental assumptions about power and control in civilized space. The rescue operation had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, not just in saving Parker and his fellow prisoners, but in exposing and destroying a system of oppression that had operated unchallenged for centuries. The loyalty between human and dog had proven stronger than alien technology, more enduring than time itself, and more powerful than the forces that sought to control the galaxy through fear. But perhaps most importantly, their story had proven that some bonds transcend individual experience to become something universal. The connection between Parker and Ranger represented the best of what relationships between different species could achieve when built on mutual respect, trust, and unwavering loyalty. As the training exercise concluded and Ranger bounded over to greet Jake with the enthusiasm that remained unchanged despite his enhanced abilities, The dog's joy was infectious. 30 years of patient waiting had been rewarded not just with reunion but with the knowledge that his loyalty had sparked a movement that freed thousands of beings throughout the galaxy. Parker joined them on the observation deck, his face showing the contentment of a man who had found his purpose again after decades of imprisonment. But his eyes held the determination of someone who understood that their work was far from finished. There were still keeper facilities to liberate, still prisoners waiting for rescue, still species throughout the galaxy who needed to learn that cooperation could triumph over oppression. The partnership between human and enhanced dog had saved the galaxy from a threat that most beings never knew existed. Their story would inspire future generations to form bonds that transcended species barriers and create alliances that could overcome any challenge. As the three of them stood together watching the stars, Jake knew that humanity had gained something more valuable than any technology or territory. They had rediscovered the power of loyalty, the strength of determination, and the courage to fight for what was right regardless of the odds. The rescue dog, who had broken down in tears upon recognizing his long-lost handler, had become the symbol of hope for an entire galaxy. And in the warmth of that hope, countless beings found the strength to resist oppression and work together toward a future where freedom would triumph over control. The mission was complete, but the legacy would endure forever among the stars.